Welcome to the STARS program, seniors taking active roles in society. And now, here's your host, ANITA FINLEY.
We have another spectacular author. You know, we do a lot of authors in our Boomer Times, and some of them are good, some of them are great, and some of them are actually spectacular. Why do I say that? When I pick up a book, a lot of times I just kind of go through the pages very quickly and get a pretty much of an idea of what it is. But with this book, I was just paralyzed in reading it. I just had to read the whole thing. Okay, what's the book name? The book is Winners and Losers, Secrets of the Roaring Twenties and the Prodigality of the Gilded Age. The funny thing is that the author, Ron Chicone, really was a registered investment banker for 30 years, and it's only in his retirement that he got the time and also the idea that I'm going to do something that's going to be exciting for me. So that's what you did, huh, Ron?
That's exactly what I did, yes.
And how long did this book actually take you to write?
This was in the process for 3 years, actually. And even though I started out with this one, in the meantime wrote another one, then came back to this one. On it. But it was a 3-year process.
It sounds like there had to be a lot of research, too, because you really had to go into some lives.
Much. There was a lot of research that was done in this. And, you know, one of the chapters in here is about Amelia Earhart. And I liked it so much because she had a connection with Fort Pierce, which is near where I live. And she had a good friend up there of the Mrs. Dorothy Kinney, and she was the wife of George Putnam before Amelia married him, and they used to be very, very close friends. So the home is her. The Kinneys were I'm trying to think of the crayon people.
Oh,
they made the Crayolas.
Oh, yeah, right.
And they became very wealthy with that. So Dorothy was the daughter of the man who made that. And their home is still there.
Well, so actually, someone like Amelia Earhart, is funny that people, no matter how young or old they are, they all remember her because she keeps coming back into things, and she was quite a woman.
Yes.
And so I was thrilled with that. But then I learned about a lot of other people. I mean, of course, I knew, actually, we've all known about Mae West and that period of Sophie Tucker, but I didn't know the other lady.
Eva Tangway.
Yeah, I didn't know that lady. I had to look her up.
No one does. And I got to, it's crazy how I came about with that. Joni, my companion, is, she has a favorite saying, and it's, I don't care. Okay? So anytime I talk, I don't care. So eventually I knew about the I Don't Care girl because I liked the song that she did. And that was Eva Tangway. So I got interested in that, and I said, well, let me look up this Eva Tangway, because she sang that song, I don't care, I don't care. And as I got into it, it got more and more interesting. I didn't realize that she was one of the big stars of vaudeville at that time, and I didn't realize it until I actually got into it, and then I got into her life. And it fitted so much with the theme of winners and losers. Everybody here that's in the book was a winner and a loser. Like
all of us.
Yes. And there were some in there that were losers that became winners. So I also have that. There's one chapter in there, One for the Road. Mary Lou Ambrose is the girl's name that I write about, who is still a friend of ours, by the way. And it was really interesting because she was just one wild woman that she made a great success out of her life. And it was fascinating to have.
Tell you what I loved. I like cars, and I've always driven usually General Motors cars. I don't drive one now, but I used to always do that. And when I read, I didn't know that there was a Chevrolet, a Mr. Chevrolet. I learned so much from the cars.
Yes.
I guess what I loved about your book was because it was generic. It was winners and losers, not of this one genre, not of this. It was a lot of people.
Right, exactly.
And so I think that's what's going to make it so popular for people to buy this. I'm going to tell everybody again, the name is Winners and Losers, Secrets of the Roaring Twenties and the Prodigality of the Gilded Age. Now, let me just say that Vizcaya is very important in our life because my son and his wife were married there.
Yeah, beautiful place.
So it is. And, and as you said before, yes, people who had a lot of money depended what they did with it. Some people just gambled it away, like at the Kentucky Derby. You talk about that.
Yes.
But people who built, like the Deering Estate, the Vizcaya, that's there forever. And so it was worth that they did that.
And it was a masterpiece painting for them. They were like building a Michelangelo. And I know Deering, he went, everybody likes Italy, I guess. And he brought back a lot of Italy with him to that place. And so did John Ringling when he did his. His was, he loved Venice. And,
we have to talk about John Ringling. We're going to do a lot about John Ringling. We're saving that because there it is in Sarasota, the Ringling Museum. And they actually have talked to us. I think they did some advertising with us to try to bring people up there. I never go out there that I don't go to that museum and see things. And for us, the Ringling Brothers comes here. It goes all over the country, but it comes here with their Ringling Brothers, with the circus. And we get tickets and we give them out to a lot of people. We have advertising for them. When you go to that circus, you are a kid again. What he did, I guess it was, Barnum and Bailey. He named it Barnum and Bailey. Is it the same Ringling Circus?
He bought out Barnum and Bailey.
Oh, that's what he did.
Yes, it was the Ringling Circus, and he bought out Barnum and Bailey.
So you had a great interest in him, in his whole thing. That was a lot that you put in there. Tell us what fascinated you about him. Well,
John Ringling was an amazing personality, and he always wanted to be more than what he thought he was. He was the circus man. People considered him the circus man. He never minded that, but it kind of got to him a little bit. He wanted to be with the Rockefellers and people like that, And I think at one point in my book I pointed out that he probably did more for the world than any one of the Rockefellers or the Pulitzers or any of those. He brought to people the excitement that was missing out of their lives. I remember as a child when the circus came, I couldn't wait till the elephants got there and the circus got there, and that's what he brought to us. He brought an excitement that nobody else ever did.
Right, and when you think of it, a lot of the other things were people with a lot of wealth. They had to do, their parties and what they did. But here, he went down to the very basic human being, no matter how poor they were, how rich they were, they all enjoyed it together.
And he started out as a clown.
Yes, I think you talked about that, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, I did.
And so it's people like that were so fascinating. That's what I think is going to make your book so popular. You bring in side effects of people who we only usually know their name. Okay, well, he did this, he did that. But you have all these tiny little bits and pieces that make them so human.
And that's what I was trying to do in the book. And when I look back on it, sometimes I think I may have missed a bit. I would have liked to have done more when I did Billy Durant, the originator of General Motors, and because he was a fascinating personality. He really was. And here was a man that ended up all of the riches in the world, and yet I don't like to give away the ending.
No, don't do that. But I was thinking about Joni has a responsibility now because you have all this inside you. Let's do another one. There are a lot of winners and losers, Like I was thinking of Tesla, the wonderful car, which
Absolutely.
I love. And there are many
Edison.
people. Yes, many people.
That's
I think
right.
you can leave out Trump, please. But the point is that there are many people who have such interesting lives, and then you have a fascinating way to portray them.
I have to mention one person in there that I knew. She died in 1969, and by the way, this book tends to be a little more on the feminine side than my first book was, because I did more in the feminine genre than I did before. But this one was Eva. Her last name was Parker, but she was married to Parker, and I believe that Parker was the Butch Cassidy.
I did. I saw some of that. Yeah, see, and that was funny. I said, how does he know that? I mean, I'm reading this, and what you did is you got me off balance. I'm reading, I'm saying, is that true? Did he really know that? Or is he making this up? Or what? You just surround it. You mix it up. I mean, I just think this would be a great documentary, although they probably couldn't be able to do what other thing you had in here. But you have, and you never had writing classes. I mean, how did you start writing?
Well, you know, when I was very young, I used to love to write, and I did it in school and what have you. But one of the interesting things, this Eva, Parker, she rode with the Wild West Buffalo Bill show as a trick writer, and she was also acted in the movies as a stuntman for the early cowboys. Can you imagine? You know, I was so young when I knew her. I knew her for a couple of years before she died, but I was so young that I never really took the time to know the people that she knew, like Annie Oakley and people that she were friends of hers. But there were so many more stories I could have had if I had only been older and wiser.
Oh, yeah. Well, and then you had pictures.
Yes.
Where'd you wind up getting the pictures?
Well, most of that came from the internet, I've got to admit. It's
okay.
And there was some that I had in my personal collection. So,
yeah, I mean, you had that horseless carriage. It's gorgeous.
Yeah, that was from the internet.
Oh, I mean, isn't that beautiful?
And that's in a museum.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But no, I saw there's so many wonderful things that, and it's funny that the middle name of Crapo wasn't. I mean, now
isn't
that's
that something?
Hysterical. When I saw that, I said, "Is that real?" You know, and I'm sure that was real.
That was Billy Crapo Durant.
That is so.
And that was his grandfather, who was the governor of Michigan, and Crapo.
Well, you know, the Ziegfeld Follies, I'll tell you about that a little bit. They are still around. Do you know that? There's a Florida Ziegfeld Follies, and a lot of the women who were in the Ziegfeld Follies are now 80, 90, and they dance. And we've had them perform at some of our things. And I had done a lot of television, and the television, we'd bring them on, and they'd strut, and they'd walk around, and we had like 12 of them. Now, they just came back. What happens is, the leader leaves or dies, and then they have to find another leader. And someone just came up to me because we have a big Boomer Expo, which we hope you will come because we'll be featuring your book among a lot of the other books in our book.
I hope to be there, yes.
Yeah. And so they always ask, can they come? You know, and they walk around. So I'm still working on getting them to do that. But that is a time when they were different. I mean, you think about the women today, they're gorgeous and they do wear very, risque clothes. But at that time, the Ziegfeld Follies, that was pretty, I mean, it's not Victoria's Secret, but it was pretty daring.
Yes.
And it's a lot of stories. You brought up so many stories for me in my life. But let's go back to, so you actually, your profession was you were an investment advisor.
Investment advisor, yeah.
And that was for 30 years.
30 years. Advantage Capital Corporation.
Did that help you, since you were dealing with all sorts of people, rich, poor, whatever, mostly probably rich? Did that help you think about this book, with the stories that you learned and the people?
Yes, because you meet so many different people and that are in so many different professions and what have you. But I think that me being in that type of profession, I enjoyed it only a part of it, and the other part I didn't like. I don't think I liked selling securities as much as I did like the investment part of the securities. So consequently, I think if I had to do it all over again, I think I would have done more writing. I think I would have liked to become a columnist or a reporter.
The difference is, I'll tell you right now, you wouldn't be able to afford the retirement you have now. Writers, authors, writers, they're so good, but unless you do something that's like 50 ways to something.
50
right.
Shades of Grey.
Yeah, right. One of those.
I got to tell you this little story, though. When I was writing the first book, and I was reading some of the things to some of Joni's girlfriends, they said, well, where's the sex? And I said, well, I didn't have that much sex in this. I tried to find the sex for them. I did have something in there.
It was closed doors.
That's
it was
every
different.
girl I met, they said, well, where's the sex?
Yeah. Well, it is interesting. I'll tell you, I'd make a lot of speeches around, and sometimes I watch the audience and I see them dozing a little bit. And I say, okay, I'm going to tell you how to have better sex. All of a sudden, everybody jumps up. I mean, it's an amazing word, isn't it?
And
I know. Well, and unfortunately, it's misconstrued as one starts to age. That sex is not, we don't have to get off into this, but as in my professional hat on, sex can be hugging, kissing. It isn't ever what we had when we were much younger.
Oh, yeah.
And so people
it
have
changes,
to... It does. It changes, but it's lovely. Mm-hmm. And it just depends, Of course, we have a lot of men who are 60 and 70 marrying these 30-year-old women. And they don't realize what they're getting into because Cialis and all that is not going to work the way they think it is. So we can get off that. But I will just, for 1 second, I didn't want to really talk about your other book now, but yes. I'll bet a lot of the gangsters had their girlfriends.
Oh,
I mean, that
absolutely.
was big time, wasn't it?
Absolutely.
Rise
Of
and
course.
fall of a racketeer.
Yeah.
Okay, well, we don't have to go because your book we're talking about is so fascinating. We don't have to bring anything else into that right now.
And this one was absolutely the most fun to do. And I got into that more. And, you know, and that's the thing is when you can start getting into something and the words start flowing. And then all of a sudden you can put yourself into those characters, put them into their situations. I think I did it a lot with Amelia Earhart. And when I talked about one of the fascinating things, though, about her was that when she made her first overseas flight, and she became such a great
celebrity, right?
She never touched the controls of the airplane. She never flew it. She was only a passenger.
I didn't know that. Is that true? Is this
true.
one of your make-believes?
No, that's...
This is true, but
it's
she went
absolutely
as
true.
a celebrity and someone else flew
Well, she
it?
was not a celebrity until she was selected for that flight by one of the great aviatrix, and at the moment her name escapes me, but she was going to do the flight herself, and she was going to fly it. But then they decided her family asked her not to do it. And I think it was the Phipps family. And so she backed out of it, but then she was the one that got Amelia Earhart then to do the flight. And Amelia Earhart that time, as she was an aviator at the time, but not well known by anybody. And then she was interviewed for it, and then when she was interviewed for it, she was picked, and that's where she met George Putnam, by the way, who was really the one who spent the money to back her. But then after that flight, which was the Friendship flight, it was called the Friendship, and when she got to Paris, and the people were just swarming her, you know, and she became this great celebrity. She never touched the controls of the airplane.
Now, see, that's something new to talk about. But were you ever a gambler? Did you like to do the races? Is that why you know so much about it?
Love the races, but I'm not I realize
you didn't
that
bet your home and your fortune on it.
I realize that at the races they're going to take 18% of whatever you bet, so you're not going to win. But if you do it as just something as a recreational thing, it's great and it's fun, and there's a lot of history behind it. And I happen to knew two people that were prominent there, and one was a trainer and jockey, a well-known jockey, and the other one was a trainer. And they did so much for. In fact, I have the horseshoe on the last Triple Crown winner.
No, that's funny because I was thinking as you were talking, when I was in my first marriage, and I probably was only 20, 21 years old, we lived next door to Eddie Arcaro. Now, talk about that. And he did give me a horseshoe. And, of course, it's, I don't know anything that would happen to it at all, but I was going to mention that. So it's a kind of funny thing there.
Well, Bradley was who I used a lot of his material in the book, was a good friend of Eddie Arcaro's. And how they became friends is in a fight. They did get into a fight, and he hit Arcaro and knocked Arcaro down, as a matter of fact. And so in doing that, but they became good friends, and I have one of the pictures that he had sent to Mr. Bradley. Mr. Bradley died not that long ago. I kept in touch with him until he finally passed away at a assisted care facility. And just before he was he died, though, at Churchill Downs, they had a race in his honor up there. So
yeah, so his name was there, but
yeah.
I want everyone to know I'm talking with Ron Chicone, Chicone. He's the author of Winners and Losers, Secrets of the Roaring Twenties and the Prodigality of the Gilded Age. He wrote about Amelia Earhart. He wrote about Wall Street, which you know so much about. That's another story.
Jesse Livermore, fabulous character.
And see, I had never heard of him.
I know. He was probably one of the greatest stock market traders that ever lived. He made, in 1929, when the market was going down, he made $100 million. And the terrible thing about it is that every one of them got caught up in the 30s when the market was going down and when everything was bad and what have you. And he was losing his entire fortune. And one of the things that he lived for was the trading, was the thing that he was doing, not the money. Money was only a way of keeping score. That's all that it was. And when he started losing it, he became very morose. And finally, 1941, I think he spent his last night at the Stork Club with his friend that owned it. And the next day, he went to a hotel that he used to live at, and he killed himself.
Well, of course, during the stock market, we knew a lot of people killed themselves.
I've got to tell you a great one, though, on Billy Durant, because it was so poignant. I think Billy Durant, who owned mansions and boats and cars and companies and things like that, fabulous life. But eventually, the 30s caught up with Billy, too. He lost all his money. And he ended up back in Flint, Michigan, where he started. He was a salesman of horse carts at one time, And he was about 2 blocks down from where he had built the biggest General Motors plant in the world with his initials on the bricks, and he was running a bowling alley.
Okay, but you know what? It says a lot about him, but he still didn't kill himself. He still lived. He still did a good job. And so that's what he did toward his ending years?
That was it. Yeah.
I don't have a problem with that.
Well, his vision was still intact, because if we remember that after the war, this is 1946 when he died, after the war, what were some of the most prolific businesses were bowling alleys and drive-in restaurants.
I didn't know that.
And that was his vision.
So, once you are, I guess you have found this, once you're a person who's an entrepreneur and you're smart, it doesn't matter what the product is or the activity. You just take that brain and you just do something with it, right?
Exactly.
And that's what you've learned. I have to also say that I loved your cover.
Thank you.
I think it was very well done. It showed the luxury of that class of people.
The Gilded Age. I love it too. Every time I go down to that, I always stop in Vizcaya whenever I can, or get over to Catazan, or you go up to the other one.
Well, I think what we have to do is get a hold of the people at Ringling, and we have to get them to cover your book, take your book there, because they would be very impressed with the job you did on Ringling. And the same thing, Vizcaya. I don't know if they have a bookstore, but we ought to try to
look at that. Yes.
Yeah, we ought to look at that. You ought to get it into places like that, because I think that there probably aren't too many books written like this. And even though it's on other people too, I still think it's pretty good. You have something on Lindbergh.
That was in the Amelia Earhart
right
thing. And some things that they didn't know about Lindbergh. He wasn't probably the nicest man in the world.
No.
And it's not until not that long ago that they discovered that he really had children out of wedlock in Germany.
But I was going to say he also was pro-Nazi. I was told
at one time.
Yeah, at one time.
Yeah, but then he did fly combat missions.
Oh, he did
for us in the Pacific in the Second World War.
I see.
So
this is really the kind of a book that in my review, I said, it's the kind of a book you want to take with you if you're on vacation. It's a relaxing book. It's fun. But make sure, and I'll tell you this would be good for a book club. So everybody reads it, and then everybody talks about it, and each one could take maybe one chapter and talk about who that person was, and there really would be a lot of information.
I got to tell you, there's one chapter in here, too, that I really enjoy doing, and I enjoy going there to this day, and that's Jekyll Island.
I think I've been there now. I think I've been to Jekyll Island. Where is it?
The Georgia coast.
Yep.
And it's right near Brunswick. It's just off of I-95, really. But Jekyll Island was one of the most prolific and greatest millionaires club in the world at one time. Almost the 1/3 of the world's wealth was there at any one time.
But it's a tourist attraction now, isn't it?
Yes, it is.
Because I know I was there on a media tour.
And the nice thing about it is actually it closed down in the Second World War, and it was built in 1895, and it reached its peak in the 20s, and the Roaring 20s. And then when the war came along and they couldn't get help anymore and one thing and another, and they closed it down, and it was closed for over 10 years before the state of Georgia finally came in, and they bought the entire island.
Oh.
And then they tried to run it as a resort, and it didn't work. And then finally, they, I think around in the 1980s, they had this other company come in and have
made
been
it as an historic,
extremely
right.
successful now
Right.
with it. And the nice thing about it is that you can go there today and enjoy it as it was back when the millionaires all belonged to it.
Why do you think they chose such an out-of-the-way place like Georgia?
Well, it was wonderful to come up.
The
from
weather
New
was
York.
probably good too, right?
And they had hunting, they had fishing, they had tennis, they had golf, all of the things that they wanted. And the weather is surprisingly good there, better than the rest of Georgia. But right on that coastline there, where they have the warm breezes coming in from the Gulf.
Now, if people want to buy your book, I want to make sure I give them the right. They can, of course, always go to Amazon, and just put in Ron Chicone, because you're there a lot. You did a good job with their marketing that, or they picked it up. But you should go there. I don't think we should give the publishers a long name. Let's just say go to Amazon.
Yes.
And buy the book, Winners and Losers. You know, Mother's Day's coming up, Father's Day's coming up. This is a great book.
You know,
I just want to tell everybody, this is our book of the month for the upcoming May issue. We thought so much of it. It is on our cover, and there's a review inside. This is our radio show, and we are going to have Ron on again in maybe a month or two, because we want to keep this going. And we really do appreciate what you've done. So I did want to ask you this. You have so many different people. When you first started the book, did you go 1 through 10 or 1 through 20 of who you were going to do, or was this just everything came out of your mind and you just did it?
Yeah, it came, when something attracted my attention. You know, when I got into, I wanted to do Edison, but Edison was such a major
next book.
Yeah, maybe it would have to be an entire book on him, because it really went into so much. I said, I can't do this one, but it's true. I'd like to mention, though, my publisher, La Maison.
Oh, okay. It's LAMA. It's La Maison. LaMaisonPublishing.com. That's who they are.
Janet Serzanta is the president.
Okay. Well, we're glad she did that, and we thank you very much for coming and doing this with us.
Thank you, Anita.
We'll talk to you again.
Thank you.